Hi, my name is Christopher Kam, and I will be your professor for IPA5180. And this course is Sociological and Psychological Perspectives on Religious Development. So I'm looking forward to journeying with you guys. I personally love a topic like this. I have spent many years contemplating such a topic as this, and I'm looking forward to just journeying with you guys and even asking you guys questions. In addition to you guys asking me questions, I do believe I can learn from anyone who reflects profoundly on these topics. I am just one person. I have read a lot on these topics. I have reflected a ton on these topics, but I have my blind spots too, and I have a finite mind. So I'm pretty sure, and I'm not just saying this, that if you guys have been reflecting on this stuff, and will reflect a lot on this stuff in these courses, you guys will pick up blind spots and nuances that I myself have missed. So yeah, I look forward to journeying with you guys, and I am just, I'll give a little background on myself. I am just a very curious person. I have an insatiable curiosity about human nature, how it works. I come from a background, Bachelor of Science at U of T. I did my undergrad at University of Toronto studying psychology and sociology, so I did that. And then later on, I did my Master of Divinity at Tyndale College and Seminary, that's located in Toronto. So for those of us who don't know, Tyndale Seminary, it's the largest, you could say it's the largest Protestant seminary in Canada. Some people don't know, and that's fine, but that's where I did my Master of Divinity, and in addition to taking all the typical religious education courses from a Protestant perspective, such as systematic theology, church history, stuff like that, I also specialized in something called spiritual formation, which I think, a lot of Catholics would know this term, especially more than us Protestants. So us Protestants have learned borrowed a lot of the wisdom from Catholics in learning about spiritual formation. How I would summarize it in a nutshell, spiritual formation is in a contemplative journey with God through soulful reflection. Like, it doesn't fully capture all of it, but in a nutshell, that's how I'd begin my elevator speech about spiritual formation. So I did a master's degree focusing on spiritual formation. So I studied the academic part in my undergrad, and then I encountered a more soulful, contemplative aspect of our journey with God. And now I'm doing a doctorate here at St. Paul University. So I'm doing a PhD in counseling and spirituality. So this intensifies the integration even more. So I just love this stuff. I could talk about this stuff all day. To me, a little bit of an exaggeration, not fully, but to me, heaven is a place where we could talk about this stuff all day because I just love it. So more specifically, my research in my doctorate involves studying the integration of personality theory, unconscious imagination styles, and psychosocial maturity. So these three variables, just like integrating them, like intersecting them, and just having fun with a lot of the research. So I spent a lot of time contemplating this stuff, and in addition to just the education, in terms of practice, I have a psychotherapy background, so I am a registered psychotherapist, a qualifying registered psychotherapist where I practice psychotherapy with people from a counseling perspective. And I also have a spiritual direction background as well. So I am a certified spiritual director. I have done the training for that. So I am all about integration. Integration is my academic middle name. I just love it. So here, this course is a lot on religious development, and it's from a Christian perspective mainly. So I know the Bible says a few verses on religious development, specifically on the growth of spiritual maturity, from a from becoming a spiritual infant to a spiritual grown-up. And I'm just going to quote a few verses here. It's going to be in the handout that I'm going to upload online. So 1 Corinthians 13:11 says, Paul writes, "When I was a child, I talked like a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put the ways of childhood behind me." So here we have a verse where Paul doesn't give the exact specifics, but he talks about how there's different stages for his spiritual journey, metaphorical to physical growth. He was like a child before, but he's no longer like a child now. Hebrews 5 verse 13 to 14 says, "Anyone who lives on milk, being still an infant, is not acquainted with the teaching about righteousness. But solid food is for the mature, who, by constant use, have trained themselves to distinguish good from evil." So that phrase, solid food, is for the mature. So an implication is not everyone is mature yet. Some people are still on their journey towards spiritual maturity. 1 Peter 2, verse 2 says, "Like newborn babies, crave pure spiritual milk, so that by it you may grow up in your salvation." So here it says, grow up in your salvation. An implication is that it's possible to not grow in our salvation, but Peter tells people to grow, spiritually grow. 1 John 2, verse 12 to 14, John says, "I am writing to you, dear children, because your sins have been forgiven on account of his name. I'm writing to you, fathers, because you know him who is from the beginning. I'm writing to you, young men, because you have overcome the evil one. I write to you, dear children, because you know the Father. I write to you, fathers, because you know him who is from the beginning. I write to you, young men, because you are strong, and the word of God lives in you, and you have overcome the evil one." So this is not a theology course. This is not a course on exegesis and hermeneutics, but I did a little bit of research before, and 1 John 2, verse 12, 14, when the author's talking about children, young men, fathers, exegetically, he's talking about spiritual age here, not physical age. So yeah, because this course is sociological and psychological perspectives on religious development, the emphasis is not on theology or systematic takes on this from a theological perspective, but I just wanted to give a glimpse that the Bible does talk about this. So one thing I learned that was really freeing to me several years ago was to learn that the Bible says a lot of stuff on a lot of stuff, but the Bible is also silent on a lot of stuff. The Bible is silent on the details of what psychosocial, psychospiritual maturity looks like. The Bible is silent. And there's a difference between doctrine and wisdom. Doctrine is the revealed revelation of God, but wisdom, it's very different. Doctrine comes from the laws and the prophets in the Bible, but wisdom comes from people like Solomon and Daniel. They're not meant to be at war with each other, but they're meant to complement one another. And this distinction really helps me sometimes when, as a theology student, we encounter things like the psychological sciences, the social sciences, and humanities. How do we dovetail these things? Well, my perspective is that the Bible, once again, the Bible says a lot about a lot of things, but it's also silent about a lot of things. So here, I just read some verses that talk about spiritual maturity. We have instructions to not stay in our spiritual infancy. We have instructions to outgrow our spiritual diapers, so to speak. But the exact details of that are not given. And here, sociological and psychological perspectives can really help inform us. Old Testament models for this are Solomon and Daniel. So in the Old Testament, I think it was 1 Kings, where Solomon, he's recorded as the wisest guy of his time. And he actually studied the sciences. He studied plants, he studied animals, he studied ants. When the Queen of Sheba came to visit him, he also studied, I'm going to use modern language for this, but he also studied human relations and human organizations, how things can be organized better, the wisdom of that. And Daniel, when he was in Babylon, he studied how to interpret dreams. He understood wisdom, the wisdom literature, and the literature of the Babylons. And he didn't shun them, but he basically embraced it, and he integrated it with the revealed doctrine of Moses and the Israelites. So that's what we hope to do here. My perspective on wisdom is that it provides the discovery of hidden nuances that are useful to life's issues. And these useful nuances that were previously hidden, we were blind to them, we were oblivious to them. But wisdom, through reflection, we can come to see those hidden angles that we've missed before. And this is what psychology and sociology can really help us in. So one theme of this, consistent thread in this course that's going to keep spiraling through all the academic fabric is the interpenetration of all these dimensions: spiritual, theological, sociological, psychological. The integration is really going to be weaving through, because ultimately, at the end of the day, okay, when it comes to spiritual growth and spiritual maturity, there's an appropriate complexity to it, but it shouldn't be so complex that we lose the simple dimension to it too. So there's a time to be complex and sophisticated about this stuff, but there's also a time to be simple about it as well. Depends on the situation and the context. But one way to simply define spirituality from a Christian perspective is love for God and love for others. Now you can split that atom in so many ways, that word love. But at the end of the day, like when we're caring for loved ones, when we're in ministry, the stuff that really matters, it's about loving God and loving others. Now this is where the complexity comes in, because love is very multidimensional. I think we'll never fully understand God's love that He has for us and the love that He wants us to love others with. It's so simple that a child can get it, but it's so complex that people with 5 doctorates can't fully understand it. I myself, I'm far from fully understanding it. But the multidimensionality that cross-pollinates when we mix all these disciplines together, that helps us understand it more. So because love is multidimensional, psychology will help us understand it. So in terms of psychological developments, I'm just going to give examples here. One thread that's going to be interwoven in the integration is psychological development theories. So here, for example, we're going to learn from Lawrence Kohlberg that in moral development theory, as we mature, as we psychologically develop, we're going to have different attitudes towards the rule following. So, like you take a little kid, maybe his or her understanding of loving mom and dad is following the rules. Mom and dad says, don't always stay, 2 meters away from the road so that you're really far from oncoming traffic. And then the kids might think, okay, well, let me just follow this, and this is like really loving mom and dad. But as the kid grows up, if they do that forever, it's not going to be good. And sooner or later, in the appropriate development, the child will start to think, as they should, oh wow, the spirit of that rule is to stay away from dangerously encountering the road, from possibly being hit by the cars. And that's the spirit of the rule. And when I was young, I followed it in that strict way. But now, I want to continue to obey the spirit of the rule, but I don't have to be very legalistic about always staying 2 meters away from the road at all times because I have to travel to work, blah, 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 I have to travel to meet friends. So if you take this principle and take it and transport it into the spiritual dimension of loving God, like obeying God's rules, like put others before yourself. As love matures, love is going to evolve in its understanding of that rule. Don't be self-seeking. Put others first. Things like that. Don't lie. A person cannot lie and have a low psychological maturity about why they don't lie, or they cannot lie and they have a profound maturity in understanding the essence of that rule and why that rule is so good for themselves, others, and society. So, okay, and then we're going to touch on personality theories as well. I myself, I love studying personality theories. I have, as I said before, I have an insatiable curiosity about human nature and the kaleidoscope of different combinations of personality variables thrown into some character chemistry that comes out as the result. So yeah, just to give a little spiel on it, because it is only the intro week. So different personalities, they focus on different aspects of love, and no personality is blind spot free when it comes to love. So certain personalities, whether it's nature or nurture, that's beside the point for this point. They will focus on loving as serving. Other people will focus on loving as giving people space. Other people will focus on love as protecting other people very fiercely. Other people will focus on love as words of encouragement. The problem is when someone is too rigid in their way, like if someone focuses on loving others as helping others, they become a compulsive helper, a helper on steroids, and sooner or later they're going to neglect their own self-rest, self-care, and then, I won't get into details now, but then they're going to start being passive-aggressive, taking their unacknowledged anger out on others, and that's going to be really bad for human relationships. So a more mature, holistic understanding of love is to balance self-care with serving others, and knowing that self-care is actually a form of serving others, because if my tank is always 2 out of 10 full, 1 out of 10 full, I can't really love my family and my friends. But if I take the time to do recreational things, restful things, my tank will fill up back to like 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10, and that's when my loved ones can feel the full me. But we have to mature to think this way. We have to develop wisdom to really live this way, and no one's born with that naturally holistic attitude. Attachment theory. Attachment theory is one of the most well-established concepts in psychotherapy and psychology. Over half a century of empirical wisdom, it's one of the most agreed upon things by academics in psychology and psychotherapy. So basically, won't get into details now, but it's going to talk about our unconscious conditioning and how that affects our ability to receive God's love and love others. So a lot of the times, without knowing it, we project our unconscious experiences with our parents onto God unknowingly. It doesn't fly in our conscious radar, it goes under it, but we unconsciously do it. So this is not exactly attachment theory, little tangent, hopefully you guys don't mind, but a lot of people grew up in the church and they've only seen clergy or priests or pastors who are very gloomy, sullen. They might seem holy but boring. They might seem rigid, like they can't laugh, like really tense. And if someone only has that experience of religious leaders in their religious education, there's a strong chance that they're going to project that onto God unknowingly, and then they're going to think, whenever they read a Bible passage about God, saying God is holy, righteous, they're going to interpret that holiness and righteousness in a one-dimensionally rigid way, just like how it was incarnated in the religious leaders. They'll see God as someone who can't laugh, someone who can't lightheartedly chuckle, someone who can't throw a party, someone who can't take it easy and relax his muscles, so to speak, because that's holiness, that's righteousness, that, according to my limited experience in the clergy and the church. And that's going to severely restrict our ability to receive God's love if we view him that way. And if our ability to receive God's love has such a thin bandwidth, that bandwidth will likely transfer to how we love others. So attachment theory, back to attachment theory, it involves how we feel someone, how readily available is someone's love for us. How is their unconditional safety towards us? So if someone feels that anyone in an authority figure position is not safe, then once again, they're going to project that onto God. And the way that is healed is through corrective emotional experiences. Corrective experiences where you do feel safety with others. Then you unconsciously and hopefully consciously start to feel, oh, maybe God is someone I can be safe towards. Or God is someone who is safe with me. Psychoanalysis. So psychoanalysis, a lot of psychoanalysis has to do with defense mechanisms on an unconscious level. And defense mechanisms, I study couples therapy, so I come at this stuff from a partly psychological perspective. Defense mechanisms protect us from the hurts in life. Some defense mechanisms, we attack others to defend ourselves. Some we withdraw to protect ourselves and stay silent and stay aloof. Either way, that can hurt our loved ones, whether it's our significant others, our partners, or our friends. If we feel we're about to be attacked and we attack them, that's a defense mechanism on overdrive, and that hurts our loved ones. Or if we feel we're about to be attacked and we withdraw and stay silent, that can also be another form of hurting our loved ones. So that's going to affect our ability to love others with God's love. So what psychoanalysis can do is it can help us be aware of our defense mechanisms. And once we make the unconscious conscious, it partly loosens. We can be aware, okay, I normally have this tendency to attack before I feel someone attacks me. I have to be aware of this and then loosen it. So that's very useful in couples therapy, and also idealizing others and demonizing others. So this is also partially a defense mechanism where, I won't get into the details right now, but if we idealize other humans, sooner or later, they're going to be let down or we're going to be let down. And if we demonize others, that's going to lead to a lack of peace in our hearts. So just reflect on this. I watch some politics. I try not to get absorbed too much into the tornado of current events that just keeps on spinning out of control these days. But I keep some tabs on politics. I want to know enough of what our leaders are saying. And when politicians demonize other politicians, you can tell they don't have peace in their hearts, at least at that moment. And just think about the last time you were tempted to demonize someone. It might sort of feel good at that moment. It might give us pleasure at that moment, but no peace. We will never have peace when we demonize someone and paint them as all dark, all evil. But that's a defense mechanism. And we might not even know we're demonizing other people. But if we make the unconscious, conscious, bring it to light, bring it to God. God will loosen that. And the only way for peace to return to our hearts is if we let go of this demonization. And once we do that, then we'll be able to love God and receive God's love and love others better. Okay, sociological, family systems. So I talked a bit about this already, but yeah, how we grow up in our family system, that affects how we receive God's love and how we love other people. So I'll just give one example. I work with people who grew up in families where they feel that their voice wasn't heard. They felt invisible. They felt that my role was just to stay quiet in the corner and say nothing. And that, it might have protected them in like a very violent family, but growing up, it's going to stunt their growth. Like if they're in a violent context, in an emotional war zone, it has survival value to go in the corner and be quiet. But once you go to university, once you outgrow your household and move out, and you keep remaining in the corner and saying nothing and feeling like you're invisible, that's going to be harmful to that person's relationships. And the person will feel that I don't count, like I don't have any value, and that's going to affect the way they receive God's love and love others. Also, most of our families, my family included, we grow up with these scripts of what's allowed, what's not allowed. So most families, I don't have the stats on this, but as a psychotherapist, most of the clients I deal with, they grew up in families where they're not allowed to state their needs. And for example, like a lot of families have family members where they don't deeply listen to people's emotions and feelings, how they feel about an issue. And it might seem off script for someone to say, hey, I know we're discussing this right now, but right at this moment, I don't need to hear your ideas. I just need you to listen to me and not ask any questions. That might seem like an off script thing because they're not used to that in their family system. But the reason why that is valuable to do is because if you never feel heard, you are either going to explode or retreat and move on. That's like the law of human nature. If 24/7 you feel unheard, you're either going to be very angry inside and explode one day, or you're just going to retreat and move on and just abandon those relationships. Whereas that might be fixed if you say, hey, like I know right now, like you really want to discuss this intellectually, but I feel like just for like 10 minutes, could you just listen to me without saying anything? I just need to be heard. I just need to be listened to. Okay, the spiritual dimension. So I'm going to talk about this now. So the first book that's required reading is called Stages of Faith by James Fowler. So in terms of faith development, and he also does a pretty good job integrating the psychosocial element to faith development. He does a pretty good job, and he talks about 6 different stages of how our spiritual maturity flourishes from one stage to the next. So yeah, this is the first book of required reading. The second book is The Courage to Teach by Parker Palmer. I think this guy is an extremely wise guy, and I'm one of these people where I don't say that about many authors, because if you said that about too many authors, if you said that about many authors, then your words would be like throwing pennies everywhere. But I want my words to just have a lot of currency to it. So I reserve these words for extremely wise people like Parker Palmer. He's an extremely wise guy. Just the way he writes, the texture he writes with. The only way to experience it is to read the book itself. And this book is more on the philosophy of teaching, but he's not in his head. He talks about the spiritual, experiential elements of teaching it's hard to capture in words, but he does a really good job. And because there's a religious education element in this course, yeah, this is going to be the second book of required reading. We're only going to go through 4 chapters of this, but I highly recommend the whole book. This author is really one of a kind. Okay, so spiritual. So we're going to talk a bit about how there's an experiential, contemplative aspect to journeying with God too. Some of us might be familiar with the dark night of the soul, where it feels like you didn't do anything fundamentally wrong with God. You don't have any unconfessed long-term sin or anything. You're not perfect, but you're not running away from God. You're actively pursuing God, and He feels so far away, and you don't know why. And there's no simple answers that can do it justice, and platitudes basically annoy you. This is the dark night of the soul, and St. John of the Cross, which you guys probably have heard of, yeah, he talks about journeying in that. And this is where no textbooks, no sermons, no whatever will fix it right away, but where we just got to endure the long tunnel. And then once we get to the outside, we are transformed. There's a metamorphosis that happens in our soul, and we feel closer to God and more mature with God. And I value this contemplative stuff because it's been around for longer than the psychological sciences. There is a huge contemplative devotional tradition in the church, and it gives us stuff that empirical science can't. Not that they're in contradiction or at war with each other, but it touches on dimensions of God's love that the sciences will never be able to touch on. And once again, we're trying to be multidimensional here. No one discipline has, I don't know, the golden key to all knowledge. So we're going to touch a bit on that. And we're going to also get theological. We're going to study a bit on the philosophical theology of the soul. Now, some philosophical theology will be really valuable for us today, especially in our culture where love and desire are confounded. I really like this teacher, Dallas Willard, who says, love is different from desire. He says, love is to will the good of the object being loved. Desire is not that. And he gives a really concrete illustration to flesh this out. He says, oh, people say, I love chocolate cake. Dallas Willard says, no, you desire chocolate cake. You want to eat it. You don't want to take care of it. So it is philosophy here, but this philosophical distinction is very valuable when we're trying to grow in our love of God and love of others, because there's a point where we love our family members, we loved our loved ones, we loved our significant others, not because of what they can give us, but we love them because of the beauty and just of loveness of who they are. The exact same thing with us and God. In our spiritual infancy, like a physical infant, we just ask our parents, we ask God for things, give me, give me, give me, give me. And it's not inherently wrong, but if we stay like that forever, it's going to be immature. And the Catholic writers, the Protestant writers, write about the deeper stages of spiritual maturity where we just love God because He is so good. We love God because He is so great. It's just like pick your favorite celebrity if you don't like pop culture. Pick someone from the pages of history whom you would love to have a 1-hour conversation with. Yeah, so pick one person, like in the past, I don't know, 1,000 years, whom you would like to have 1-hour cup of coffee with. The reason why you want to have a 1-hour cup of coffee with them or her is because they're just so great to listen to, so great to converse with and discuss with. And you just want to talk with them for the sake of talking with them, not because they'll give you money, not because they'll hook you up with connections to help your business or something. You want to talk with them just for the sake of talking with them. Whether it's Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., I don't know, yeah, you name it. Like, you just want to talk to them for the sake of talking to them. Same with us in God. Same with us in God, where the deeper stages of maturity, we just want to talk to him because he's that good of a conversationalist to our souls. So, Jen, I don't know how long that is. What time?
You're at 35 minutes. So.
35 minutes. Okay, I'm going to wrap up. So yeah, that's just the intro to this course. Yeah, so I just wanted to whet our appetite. Just wanted to start dipping our feet in different dimensions of sociological and psychological perspectives on religious development. And so one question we're going to have constantly through this course, as I mentioned earlier, is how did these different dimensions interpenetrate? How did they affect each other? Not only psychological and sociological perspectives affecting our religious development, how does religious development affect our psychological and sociological perspectives? So yeah, the format of the course, we're going to have, on average, a lecture every other week and a discussion forum every other week on the alternate weeks where there are no lectures. You can read the syllabus for more clarity. You can email me if you have any questions. I would love to talk. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. And yeah, see you guys on site. I think it was either October 3rd or 4th or October 5th or 6th. It's the Friday and the Saturday of that weekend. I will see you guys in person, and we're going to have fun. We're going to do some experiential exercises as well regarding this stuff. So yeah, see you guys online, see you guys on Brightspace, see you guys on site in October. Really looking forward to this, and yeah, we're going to have a great time.